I stared at my reflection in the elevator's polished doors, watching droplets of fever sweat roll down my temples. The report folder trembled in my hands as the numbers on the display ticked upward toward the executive floor, 38.9 degrees Celsius. And I was about to face Eleanor Price, a woman whose cold demeanor could probably cure my fever or finish me off entirely. My name is Cassidy, and this was the moment everything in my life started to unravel. The elevator dinged, and I stumbled into the pristine hallway of Price and Partners Advertising. The fluorescent lights made my head swim as I made my way toward the conference room, where I could already hear Eleanor's precise, cutting voice through the glass walls. "Where is she?" This presentation was scheduled for 9 sharp. I pushed open the door, immediately feeling 12 pairs of eyes lock onto me. "I'm so sorry for the delay, Miss Nolan." Eleanor's voice could freeze hell over. She sat at the head of the table, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, designer glasses perched on her nose like weapons aimed at my career. "How kind of you to finally join us. Though I suppose punctuality is merely a suggestion these days." "I apologize, Mrs. Price. I've been fighting a fever, but I have the complete report ready." "A fever?" She arched an eyebrow. "Well, isn't that convenient? Just like the family emergency that delayed last month's campaign launch." My cheeks burned hotter than my fever. That family emergency had been my sister's miscarriage, but I wasn't about to share that detail with Eleanor Price. I fumbled with my presentation materials, trying to focus as the room tilted slightly. If I could just pull up the quarterly numbers. "Oh, I've already seen them," Eleanor interrupted, holding up her tablet. "Marcus was kind enough to email them to me last night. Your work, I believe, though submitted through his account." Marcus, that backstabbing little. I glanced at my colleague, who suddenly found his coffee cup fascinating. He'd asked to review my report yesterday, claiming he wanted to provide feedback before the big presentation. "I'm afraid these numbers don't tell the story we need them to tell," Eleanor continued, her voice dripping with false concern. "Perhaps if you'd spent more time on analysis and less time on whatever else occupies your attention, we'd have something worth presenting to the board next week." The room started to spin. I gripped the back of a chair, my knuckles white. "Mrs. Price, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why our biggest client's campaign metrics are underperforming? Or why 3 junior copywriters have requested transfers from your team in the past month?" "That's not..." I swayed slightly and someone gasped. Through my blurring vision, I saw Eleanor's lips curl into something that might have been a smile. "Miss Nolan, you look unwell. Perhaps you should take the rest of the day to recover. We can discuss your future with the company when you're feeling more capable." I opened my mouth to protest, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I turned and fled, barely making it to the elevator before my legs gave out. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of a man rushing toward me, tall, concerned eyes, expensive suit. But the doors had already sealed shut, leaving me alone with my humiliation and the realization that my career might be over. What I didn't know then was that the man by the elevator was Ethan Price, Eleanor's son, and that this moment of complete professional destruction would lead me down a path I never expected. One that would teach me that karma isn't just a concept, it's a promise. But first, I had to survive this fever. And then I had to figure out how to survive Eleanor Price. 3 days after my humiliating breakdown, I was nursing a coffee at the bean counter when someone slid into the seat across from me. It was him, the man from the elevator. Up close, his concerned eyes were even more striking, a warm brown that seemed to carry genuine kindness. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, setting down his own coffee. "I'm Ethan. I saw you at Price and Partners the other day, and I wanted to make sure you were okay." I wrapped my hands tighter around my mug. "Cassidy. And I'm fine. Just a fever that picked the worst possible moment to spike." Eleanor Price has a talent for making bad moments worse. His mouth quirked into a half smile. "I've seen it happen more times than I can count." "You work there too?" "No, thank God." He chuckled, then hesitated. "But I know the company well enough." "Listen, what happened in that meeting? It wasn't about your work. Eleanor's been particularly ruthless lately because she's losing control of the Morrison account." My head snapped up. "What? But that's impossible. Morrison's been with Price and Partners for decades. Things change. People change." Ethan's expression darkened momentarily. Sometimes the facade starts cracking, and people see what's really underneath. A group of businessmen entered the cafe, their loud conversation filling the space. One of them glanced our way, did a double take at Ethan, then quickly looked away. Interesting. So I said, studying him. You seem to know a lot about Price and Partners for someone who doesn't work there. Let's just say I have a complicated relationship with the company. He leaned forward, his coffee forgotten. But I'm more interested in hearing about you. What made you choose advertising? For the next hour, we talked about everything except Eleanor Price. Ethan was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in my stories about campaign disasters and creative breakthroughs. When he laughed at my terrible industry jokes, something warm settled in my chest, replacing the knot of anxiety that had lived there since the meeting. I should get going, I finally said, gathering my things. I have a meeting with Human Resources tomorrow about my future at the company. Wait, Ethan pulled out his business card. If you need anything, advice, a friendly ear, or just someone to share coffee with, call me. I took the card, my fingers brushing his. Thanks, but I'm not looking for. I know. His smile was gentle. But everyone needs allies, especially when facing Eleanor Price. Later that night, I finally looked at his card. Ethan Price, financial analyst at Morgan Stanley. My stomach dropped as I Googled his name. Photos popped up, Ethan at charity galas, business functions, and there, in an old Society page article, Eleanor Price, CEO of Price and Partners, with her son Ethan at the annual Advertising Excellence Awards. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dinner tomorrow? I promised to explain everything. Ethan. I stared at the message, my mind racing. Eleanor Price's son had sought me out. Was this a trap? Some elaborate scheme to humiliate me further? Or was he genuinely trying to help? Another text came through, no agenda, no strings. Just dinner and honest conversation. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The smart thing would be to delete his number and stay far away from anything connected to Eleanor Price. But something about Ethan felt different, genuine in a way his mother never was. Okay, I typed back. But you're buying, and I want the full story. His response was immediate. Deal. And Cassidy? Thank you for giving me a chance to explain. I set my phone down, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my career or stumbled onto something that could change everything. Either way, tomorrow's dinner would reveal whether Ethan Price was truly different from his mother, or if the apple had landed right at the base of that poisonous tree. 6 months into dating Ethan, I found myself standing in Eleanor Price's marble-floored foyer, clutching his hand like a lifeline. The engagement ring on my finger felt impossibly heavy as Eleanor's gaze fixed on it, her expression shifting from confusion to something darker. Mother, Ethan said, his voice steady but tense. We wanted to tell you in person. Eleanor set her wine glass down with deliberate precision. How unexpected. Though I suppose I should have seen this coming when you kept appearing at company events together. We weren't trying to hide anything, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. We just wanted to be sure before announcing your relationship with the CEO's son to the entire company. Eleanor's smile was razor-sharp. How considerate. Though I must say, your recent promotion to senior creative makes much more sense now. The blood drained from my face. That promotion was based on my work with the Morrison account. Of course it was, dear. Eleanor turned to Ethan. And you're certain about this? Arrangement. Mother. Ethan's warning tone carried years of unspoken tension. I'm simply concerned. Eleanor moved closer, her designer heels clicking against the marble. After all, office romances can be so complicated, especially when they involve different levels of the corporate hierarchy. My promotion. She was going to make everyone think I'd slept my way to the top. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Actually, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, I've been meaning to discuss my position at the company. Both Ethan and Eleanor turned to look at me. I'll be submitting my resignation tomorrow. I've accepted an offer from Davidson and Mills. Eleanor's eyebrows shot up. Have you now? Cassidy. Ethan started, but I squeezed his hand. It's the right move, I said. For everyone. Eleanor's laugh was like breaking glass. Oh, darling. Davidson and Mills? I had lunch with James Davidson just yesterday. Fascinating how he never mentioned hiring you. My stomach dropped. The offer letter on my phone suddenly felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. In fact, Eleanor continued, swirling her wine, I believe they just filled their creative director position. Such a shame, timing is everything in this industry. The room tilted slightly. I'd signed the contract 2 days ago. Had calls scheduled for Monday to meet my new team. What did you do? Ethan's voice was dangerously quiet. Nothing, darling. I simply had a friendly conversation with an old colleague about the importance of professional integrity. Eleanor's smile never wavered. We can't have people thinking positions are being handed out based on personal relationships, can we? You had my offer rescinded. The words felt like ash in my mouth. I protected my company's reputation. And yours, though you may not see it that way. Eleanor stepped closer, her perfume suffocating. Did you really think you could use my son to advance your career without consequences? That's enough. Ethan moved between us. You've gone too far this time. Have I? Ask yourself why she never mentioned your connection to Price and Partners to her new employers. Ask yourself what else she might be hiding. I backed away, my engagement ring catching the light. Everything I'd worked for was crumbling, and Eleanor Price stood in the ruins, sipping wine like she was watching a mildly interesting play. We're leaving, Ethan said, guiding me toward the door. And Mother? This isn't over. No, Eleanor agreed, her voice following us out. It's only beginning. In the car, Ethan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. We'll figure this out. I have contacts, I can make calls. Don't you see? I whispered. She'll always have more power, more connections. She'll never stop. Then we'll stop her. Ethan's voice was steel. Together. But as we drove away from Eleanor's mansion, my phone buzzed with an email from Davidson and Mills, formally rescinding their offer due to unforeseen circumstances. And I realized that taking down Eleanor Price would require more than just determination. It would require becoming as ruthless as she was. The question was, could I do that without losing myself in the process? The Morrison account files sat heavy in my bag as I rode the elevator to my floor at Price and Partners. After Eleanor's sabotage of my job offer, I'd spent 2 weeks debating this moment. My resignation letter burned a hole in my pocket, but these files, they were my insurance policy. Marisol caught me before I reached my office. Cassidy, thank God. Eleanor's called an emergency meeting. Morrison's threatening to pull their entire portfolio. My stomach dropped. What? Why? Numbers aren't adding up. Someone leaked internal documents showing we've been padding engagement metrics. Marisol's eyes were sharp. Eleanor's out for blood. The conference room was a war zone when we entered. Eleanor stood at the head of the table, her usual composure cracking around the edges. Miss Nolan, she said, voice dripping acid. How convenient that you're here. Would you care to explain why Morrison received an anonymous email detailing discrepancies in their campaign metrics? Every head turned toward me. I felt the weight of the files in my bag, remembered the copies I'd secured off-site. I wouldn't know anything about that, Mrs. Price. No. She slid a paper across the table. Because these numbers match the reports you prepared last quarter. Reports that only 5 people had access to. Mother. Ethan's voice cut through the tension as he entered the room. This isn't the way to handle this. Eleanor's face went white. What are you doing here? Protecting my fiancé from another one of your witch hunts. He moved to stand beside me. We both know those numbers were manipulated long before Cassidy joined the company. The room went deadly quiet. I watched Eleanor's fingers tighten around her pen until her knuckles went white. Everyone out, she ordered. Except you 3. She pointed to Ethan, Marisol, and me. As the room cleared, Marisol spoke up. The Morrison account has been doctored for years, Eleanor. We all know it. Careful, Marisol, Eleanor warned. Loyalty has limits. Yes, Marisol agreed. It does. She pulled out her phone and played a recording. Eleanor's voice filled the room, clearly instructing someone to adjust the engagement metrics. Eleanor's mask slipped completely. You recorded me? In my own company. I recorded you ordering me to commit fraud, Marisol corrected. 3 years ago, when you first started losing control of the account. My hand found Ethan's under the table. This wasn't just about my career anymore. This was about years of manipulation and lies. What do you want? Eleanor's voice was ice. Your resignation, Ethan said quietly. Step down gracefully, Mother. Before this gets worse. Eleanor laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. You think you can threaten me? In my own company. She turned to me. You did this. Turned my son against me. Corrupted my most trusted director. No, I interrupted, finally finding my voice. You did this. Every manipulation, every lie, every person you've crushed to maintain control, it's all coming back around. Get out. Eleanor's voice shook. All of you. And Cassidy? Consider yourself terminated. Actually, I pulled out my resignation letter. I quit. But don't worry. I'm sure the Morrison team will be very interested in my exit interview. As we left the conference room, Eleanor called out, Ethan, if you walk out that door with her, you'll what? He turned back. Destroy my career too? Cut me off? Go ahead. Some things are worth losing everything for. In the elevator, Marisol finally spoke. You know she won't stop. She'll try to destroy all of us. Let her try, I said, thinking of the evidence we'd gathered, the allies we'd made. She's not the only one who knows how to play the long game. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and I stepped out feeling lighter than I had in months. Eleanor Price had taught me well. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about letting them destroy themselves. But as my phone buzzed with an unknown number, I realized this was just the beginning of a much bigger war. The rejection email from Hawthorne Creative stared back at me from my phone screen, the 5th one this month. Each one followed the same pattern. Enthusiastic interviews, verbal offers, then sudden radio silence followed by polite rejections. They all lead back to her, Ethan said, watching me from our kitchen counter. Mother's making sure every agency in the city knows not to hire you. I set my phone down harder than necessary. She can't blacklist me forever. Can't she? He ran a hand through his hair. A gesture I'd learned meant he was holding something back. Cassidy, there's something you should know about the Morrison account. Before he could continue, my phone lit up with a text from Marisol. Turn on channel 8 now. The TV flickered to life just in time to catch Eleanor Price, immaculate as ever, addressing a room of reporters. Allegations of fraudulent reporting are completely unfounded. Price and Partners maintains the highest standards of integrity. She's spinning it, I whispered. She's actually going to get away with it. These accusations stem from a disgruntled former employee who was terminated for poor performance. My hands shook as I grabbed my laptop, pulling up my email. I have proof. The original reports, the altered numbers, everything. I could send it all to Morrison right now. Wait, Ethan caught my wrist. That's exactly what she wants. If you leak those documents, she'll have grounds for a lawsuit. She's baiting you. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Through the peephole, I saw a courier with an official-looking envelope. Miss Cassidy Nolan? He handed me the package. You've been served. Inside was a cease and desist letter from Price and Partners' legal team, threatening action for defamation and breach of confidentiality. How did she know? I looked at Ethan. About the documents? His face went pale. I mentioned them to Marcus last week, trying to negotiate a severance package for you. I thought I trusted him. Marcus. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. The same Marcus who stole my report? You went to him. I was trying to help. Ethan reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't. My voice cracked. Just don't. My phone buzzed again, another text from Marisol. Eleanor's calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow. Something big is happening. Then a second message. She's selling the company. What? Ethan grabbed his own phone, scrolling rapidly. She can't. The board would never. Unless she's found a buyer who'll protect her interests, I said slowly. Someone who'll maintain her version of events and make sure the truth stays buried. The pieces clicked together. Eleanor's media appearance, the legal threat, the timing of it all. She wasn't just trying to silence me. She was orchestrating her exit strategy. There's more, Ethan said quietly. The trust fund she set up for me? It's tied to company shares. If Price and Partners changes hands, you lose everything. The weight of it settled over us both. Eleanor had outmaneuvered us again, threatening not just my career but Ethan's financial security. My laptop dinged with a new email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, regarding Eleanor Price, open alone. Don't, Ethan warned. It could be another trap. But I was already clicking. Inside was a single line: "If you want the real story about Eleanor Price, meet me at the Grand Hotel Bar, 8 p.m. Richard Price. Your father." I looked at Ethan, whose face had gone completely still. Why now? Because he knows something we don't. Ethan's voice was tight. Something that could either save us or destroy everything. I stared at the email, then at the legal notice, then at Eleanor's face still playing on the TV screen. We were running out of options, out of time. "I'm going," I said. "Whatever your father knows, whatever Eleanor's hiding, it's our only chance." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then we go together." "But Cassidy." His eyes met mine. "Be careful what you wish for. The truth about my mother. It might be worse than you imagine." The Grand Hotel Bar was nearly empty when we arrived, except for a silver-haired man nursing a scotch in the corner. Richard Price looked exactly like the photos I'd seen. Distinguished, weathered, with Ethan's kind eyes. But there was something else there too, a heaviness that spoke of long-buried secrets. "You shouldn't have come," were his first words to us. "Eleanor has people watching." "Let them watch," I said, sliding into the booth. "I have nothing left to lose." Richard's laugh was bitter. "That's what I thought 20 years ago. Before she took everything." "What do you mean?" Ethan asked, his voice tight. "You left us." "That's what Mother always said." "Is that what she told you?" Richard pulled out a worn leather portfolio. "Your mother didn't just push me out of the company, son. She orchestrated my complete destruction. And she used the same playbook she's using on Cassidy." He spread out documents across the table. Old contracts, letters, news clippings. My hands shook as I recognized the pattern. Systematic isolation, professional sabotage, carefully crafted lies. "The Morrison account wasn't the first time she doctored numbers," Richard continued. "She's been doing it for decades. I threatened to expose her, so she..." The bar's lights suddenly blazed to full brightness. Eleanor Price stood in the doorway, flanked by two men in suits. "How predictable," she said, walking toward us. "The disgraced husband returns to poison my son against me." "Mother," Ethan started. "Don't bother, darling. I saw this coming the moment you chose her over your family." Eleanor's smile was glacial. "Richard, I suggest you leave before I have security remove you. And those documents you're so eager to share? They're inadmissible, covered by the NDA you signed 20 years ago." Richard's face went pale. "You wouldn't." "Try me." She turned to me. "Miss Nolan, I'm feeling generous. Walk away now from the company, from these ridiculous allegations, from my son, and I'll ensure you find work elsewhere. Perhaps even overseas." "You're trying to buy me off?" I stood, anger burning through my fear. "After everything you've done, I'm offering you an exit strategy. More than I gave Richard." Her eyes flicked to the portfolio. "Those documents prove nothing except that some people can't accept failure gracefully." "You ruined my life," Richard said quietly. "No, dear. You ruined your own life by crossing me." Eleanor snapped her fingers, and the security guards moved forward. "Now, I believe this meeting is over." "Wait." Ethan's voice cut through the tension. He was staring at something in the portfolio. "These dates. The Morrison account adjustments. They match the company's founding dates." Eleanor's composure cracked, just for a moment. "The company was never yours to begin with, was it?" Ethan continued. "It was Dad's. You stole it from him. I built that company into what it is today." Eleanor's voice rose sharply. "Your father would have run it into the ground with his outdated principles and weak leadership. So you fabricated evidence of embezzlement," Richard said. "Made me look like a criminal to the board. And now you're doing the same to me," I realized. "Because I found proof of your fraud." Eleanor's laugh was hollow. "Proof? Look around, dear. I own this city's advertising world. Who would believe you over me? Who would dare?" She reached for the portfolio, but Ethan snatched it away. "I would. And so would the FBI's Financial Crimes Division." The color drained from Eleanor's face. "You wouldn't dare. Try me," Ethan echoed her earlier words. "Unless..." "Unless what?" "Unless you're ready to negotiate." His voice was steel. "Starting with Cassidy's career and ending with Dad's reputation." Eleanor's eyes darted between us, calculating. For the first time, I saw fear beneath her perfect mask. But as she opened her mouth to respond, her phone buzzed. The message she read made her smile return, slow, triumphant. "Actually," she said, "I don't think I'll be negotiating anything. The board just approved the sale. By this time tomorrow, Price and Partners will belong to someone else, along with all its records, accounts, and evidence of any irregularities." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Ethan? Check your trust fund. I think you'll find some interesting changes there, too." As she walked away, I realized we'd just lost our last chance at justice. Eleanor Price had outmaneuvered us again, and this time, she'd made sure to burn every bridge behind her. The annual Advertising Excellence Awards buzzed with nervous energy as Eleanor Price took the stage to announce the sale of her company. I watched from the back of the ballroom, Marisol's USB drive heavy in my clutch, waiting for my moment. "Change is inevitable," Eleanor was saying, "but legacy is forever. That's why I'm proud to announce that Price and Partners will be joining the Global Media Alliance family." My phone lit up with a text from Ethan. "Buyer's rep is stalling. You're clear." I slipped through the crowd toward the tech booth, where Marisol was already waiting. "Security cameras?" I whispered, looping footage from last year's ceremony. "We have 4 minutes." I handed her the drive. The presentation Eleanor had queued up was about to become very different from what she'd planned. And now, Eleanor continued, "I'd like to share a video highlighting our company's proudest achievements." The lights dimmed. Eleanor's carefully curated presentation disappeared, replaced by security footage of her threatening Richard in his office 20 years ago. The audio was crystal clear. "Sign the papers, Richard, or I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. The board already believes you're embezzling funds." "Who do you think gave them that idea?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Eleanor froze mid-sentence, her face illuminated by the damning evidence. The footage changed, Eleanor doctoring the Morrison account numbers, then coaching Marcus on how to steal my report. Each clip was dated, documented, devastating. "Turn it off," Eleanor commanded, but the tech booth remained dark. I said, "Turn it." "They can't hear you," I said, stepping into the light. "Just like you couldn't hear me when I tried to tell you the truth about the Morrison account." "You." Eleanor's voice shook with rage. "Security. They're busy," Ethan said, joining me. Apparently, the FBI's Financial Crimes Division needed to speak with them about some interesting offshore transactions. The room had erupted into chaos. Board members were already heading for the exits, phones pressed to their ears. The Global Media Alliance representatives huddled in urgent conversation. "You think this changes anything?" Eleanor laughed, but there was hysteria in it. "I still own this company. I still control." "Actually," Richard emerged from the crowd, "you don't. The board called an emergency meeting this afternoon. Once they saw evidence of your long-term fraud, they voted to suspend the sale and remove you as CEO." Eleanor's perfect mask cracked completely. "You can't prove." "We can," I interrupted. "Every document, every altered report, every threat you made, it's all there. Your own security system recorded everything. You were so busy watching everyone else. You forgot to watch yourself." "Why?" Her question was barely a whisper. "Why go to all this trouble?" "Because you taught me well, Eleanor. You showed me that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone." I met her eyes. "Sometimes it's about letting them destroy themselves." The lights blazed back to full brightness. FBI agents were moving through the crowd now, heading for the stage. "Miss Price," one called out, "we need you to come with us." Eleanor straightened her spine, smoothed her designer dress. Even now, she was trying to maintain control. But as she passed me, she paused. "You'll become me, you know," she said softly. "Power changes people. Corrupts them. Ask Richard." "No," I replied. "I'll become something you never could. Someone who builds people up instead of tearing them down." She laughed one last time as the agents led her away. "We'll see." In the aftermath, as reporters swarmed and phones buzzed with breaking news alerts, Ethan took my hand. "You okay?" he asked. I watched Eleanor's retreating figure, thinking about power and revenge, and the fine line between justice and becoming what you hate. "Ask me tomorrow," I said, "when we start rebuilding this company the right way." But Eleanor's final words echoed in my mind, a warning or a prophecy. Only time would tell which one of us was right about power's true nature, and whether karma had finished its work or was just beginning. 1 year later, I stood in Eleanor's old office, my office now, holding a letter that had just emerged from a hidden compartment in her antique desk. The renovation crew had found it while preparing for the agency's rebranding. The envelope simply read, "To my successor." "You don't have to read it," Ethan said from the doorway. He'd been helping oversee the transition since the board appointed me CEO 6 months ago. "Yes, I do." I broke the seal, Eleanor's familiar handwriting spilling across the page. "To whoever finds this letter, you think you've won. Just as I thought I'd won when I took this company from Richard. But power isn't about winning. It's about surviving. Every decision I made, every person I destroyed, was about survival in a world that devours the weak. You'll understand soon enough. Eleanor Price." I set the letter down as Marisol entered with the quarterly reports. "Morrison's numbers are up 40% since we implemented the transparency initiative," she said. "Turns out honesty actually works better than fraud." "Who knew?" "Eleanor knew," I said quietly. "She just chose differently." The phone buzzed. Richard, calling from the lobby. Since Eleanor's conviction, he'd been instrumental in rebuilding client trust, working alongside Ethan to restore the company's reputation. "The new signs are going up," he announced when I met him outside. We watched as workers removed the last Price and Partners lettering from the building. "Having second thoughts about the name change?" Richard asked. I shook my head, watching the new logo being installed, Collective Creative Partners. "No more single names on the building," I said. "No more one person holding all the power." That's what Eleanor never understood. Success doesn't have to mean survival of the fittest. My phone chimed with a news alert. Eleanor Price had been denied early release. The accompanying photo showed her in prison gray, her perfect mask finally stripped away. "She wrote that power corrupts," I told Richard. "That I'd become just like her." "And have you?" I thought about the changes we'd implemented: profit sharing for employees, mentorship programs, collaborative decision-making. The agency was thriving not despite these changes, but because of them. "I think," I said carefully, "that power reveals who we already are." Back in my office, I found Ethan studying Eleanor's letter. "You know what's strange," he said. "Part of me still wants her approval. Even after everything." I touched his shoulder, understanding the weight of that admission. She taught us both valuable lessons, just not the ones she intended. The intercom buzzed. The Morrison team was waiting in the conference room for our strategy presentation. As I gathered my materials, I caught my reflection in the window, standing exactly where Eleanor had stood that fever-filled morning that felt like a lifetime ago. "Ready?" Ethan asked. I took one last look at Eleanor's letter before locking it away. She was right about one thing. Power isn't about winning. But she was wrong about survival. Sometimes the greatest power lies in choosing not to destroy, in building something new from the ruins of the old. "Ready?" I said, and stepped out of the office, leaving Eleanor's ghost behind. But that night, as I worked late finalizing the agency's new mission statement, I found myself opening my desk drawer, looking at that letter again. Eleanor's words about survival nagged at me, not because I feared becoming her, but because I finally understood her. Fear had driven every decision she'd made, and in the end, that fear had become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began to write. "To my successor, power isn't about survival. It's about choice. Choose wisely. Cassidy Nolan." I sealed it and slipped it into the same hidden compartment where Eleanor's letter had waited. Someone would find it someday, and when they did, they'd face the same choice I had: to build or to destroy, to fear or to trust, to survive or to truly live. The choice, as always, would be theirs.